This video is brought to you by NordVPN, the sponsor that lets me say whatever I want. That said, I know I'm a broken record at this point, but what can I do? We've been stuck inside for a whole ass year now, and I know that you watched all of Netflix. Now, with NordVPN, you can both beef up your online security and access more content. Just head over to nordvpn.com/reignbot and use promo code reignbot to get a huge, massive discount on a 2-year plan, plus 1 month free. After that, just select any one of these 5,400 servers across these 59 countries, then head back to Netflix and watch whatever you want in not American Netflix. If you want to take it a step further, do this with up to 6 devices because that's how many NordVPN lets you connect under a single account. They also really wanted me to tell you about their 30-day money-back guarantee, so yeah, if you hate it, just cancel. Again, that's nordvpn.com/reignbot and promo code reignbot for a huge discount, and don't try to use those other VPNs for this because a lot of them don't even work. Thank you very much NordVPN for sponsoring this video, and with all that said, let's begin. Thailand is a country famed for its beauty. Its white beaches, crystal clear waters, and lush jungles make it what many of us would consider a paradise. As such, the Thai mainland and neighboring islands are a hotbed for tourists, whether as a stop for backpackers exploring Asia, a place for holidaymakers to relax in the sun, or as a spot for spring breakers to enjoy the nightlife. At times, however, fantasy can be at odds with reality, and such was the case for the island of Koh Tao in 2014, which gained sudden international infamy following a gruesome double murder. On September 12, 2014, 23-year-old Hannah Witheridge arrived at Koh Tao with 3 female friends. The UK native was on break from her postgraduate degree, and while her parents were resistant to the idea of their daughter going to Thailand, Hannah chose to book her ticket anyway. Not long into her stay at Koh Tao, Hannah met a fellow Brit, 24-year-old David Miller. Now, David and his friends had come to the island as part of a journey across Thailand, and happened to cross paths with Hannah because the pair were staying at the same hotel. Though they were strangers, the two of them and their companions decided to spend time together, but unfortunately it wasn't long before events took a tragic turn. September 14th, 2014. At around 7 p.m., Hannah, David, and a few others all had drinks at a bar on nearby Sairi Beach. CCTV footage from that evening indicates that the group stayed together until shortly after midnight on September 15th, at which point Hannah and 3 friends split off from the pack. At 2 a.m., David met back up with Hannah, and sometime after 2:15 a.m., they left the bar together to walk back to their hotel. Unbeknownst to anyone then, this would be the last time anyone would see these two alive. Later that same morning, David and Hannah's semi-naked bodies were found on the beach by horrified hotel staff who quickly informed their boss, Montruat Tuvechian, of the gruesome discovery. David was found floating in the shallows, his head bludgeoned. Hannah too had been bludgeoned and was found lying on the sand. It was quickly confirmed that she had been sexually assaulted during the attack. Though Thai police arrived quickly, it was immediately obvious that they were ill-equipped to deal with the situation. At the time of the incident, there were only 6 officers total on the island, and these officers struggled to control the crime scene in any meaningful way. As a result, unauthorized individuals were able to walk freely throughout the area, and spectators even managed to take pictures of the victims, which circulated widely on social media. This would have been bad enough had the victims been local, but because these were tourists from the UK, news outlets from around the world picked up on the story and ran with it. This, of course, led to far greater scrutiny of the Thai police, and due to this pressure, authorities seemed to be in a hurry to close the case rather than to actually solve it. As such, the truth of this story is very hard to separate from the deliberately misleading, the accidentally inept, and outright guesswork. Based on the evidence on the beach, investigators quickly came to a few conclusions. They discovered a bloody garden hoe believed to come from a nearby vegetable garden and suspected that this was the murder weapon, but went on to say that the blood on it only belonged to Hannah Witheridge, which suggested the use of a second blunt metal object against David Miller. Also found was a cigarette butt 30 to 50 meters from the crime scene, which held the DNA of, quote, 2 Asian men. They claimed to have recovered more DNA from the body of Hannah Witheridge, which matched the DNA on said cigarette. This suggested that the offenders had shared it before the assault. In a place known for nightlife and tons of people coming and going on a whim, pinning down these 2 suspects was not going to be easy, but Thai police felt by pure intuition that they could be certain about one thing. The people who did this could not have been Thai. This, of course, was completely unfounded and entirely premature, but nonetheless, it set the course for this case going forward. Police presence on Koh Tao was increased tenfold, and they immediately began targeting the island's main immigrant population as potential suspects. Before we dig any deeper, it's important to understand a few things about the island's populace. On Koh Tao, migrants from Burma, now known as Myanmar, make up a greater percentage of the population than Thai natives do. However, their majority affords them neither opportunity nor safety. In a documentary called Murder in Paradise, migrant rights campaigner Andy Hall states, quote, "They're very much unrespected, unwelcome, and unwanted. So people take from them what they need in terms of their physical labor, their manual labor, but they don't give them the rights. And they're at a very high risk of exploitation and abuse, whether by brokers, by their employers, or by corrupt officials." So it should be noted that tourists were not left out of this investigation, but it was so heavily one-sided that around 200 people, all Burmese workers, were swabbed for DNA in an attempt to find the culprit, and sure enough, all of this led to the conclusion that you might expect. In late September of 2014, around 2 weeks after the bodies were found, 3 Burmese immigrants who'd been spotted on CCTV in the Sairee Beach area were questioned by police. At this stage, they were apparently considered potential witnesses rather than suspects, and all 3 admitted to being on Sairee Beach on the night the crimes took place. While one was released, the other 2, Zalin and Waipio, were arrested on immigration offenses and confessed to the murders while in custody. But just a couple weeks after their arrest, both of the accused would retract their confessions and later go on to explain a very different version of events. Their trial began on October 14th of 2014, and almost immediately, migrant rights activist Andy Hall found himself having to fight on behalf of the defendants. "This case is really being hurried. It's hurting the rights of the accused," Hall said at the time, explaining that the defense's request to postpone pretrial witness testimony was declined, and that prior to this testimony, the defense were only allowed to meet with their lawyers for around half an hour, which wasn't nearly enough time to prepare. The prosecution's case relied heavily on several pieces of evidence. One was the DNA police allegedly recovered from the body of Hannah Witheridge, and from the cigarette with matching DNA. They used this to paint Lynn and Pyo as sex-crazed, suggesting that the pair had seen Hannah and David having sex on the beach, and simply witnessing this was enough to make them resort to rape and murder. They said this in spite of the fact that David Miller's DNA was not recovered from Hannah's body, which they explained away by mentioning a used condom at the scene, which was a match for Hannah, but was, quote, too contaminated to recover male DNA. When the defense asked to retest the incriminating DNA due to doubts about the results, the opposition told them that that wouldn't be possible, either because of the samples being, quote, used up, or because they were no longer viable for testing, depending on whose recording you read. The Thai authorities were also claiming to have recovered David Miller's phone at an address linked to the Burmese men. When questioned, Waipio allegedly told the police that he'd found the phone on the beach, though this claim may not be particularly relevant for reasons we'll get into shortly. Probably the strongest part of the prosecution's case were the confessions obtained from the accused while in custody. The police went so far as to film Waipio reenacting the killings. The video, only viewable to the public several years after the trial, seemed to have no mention of the second murder weapon law enforcement expected was used early on, and includes a bizarre moment in which an officer asks Pyo how many times he struck a victim, then strokes Pyo's head in a way that some observers believe to be leading. So this video, and the accused confession in general, really take on a new light if we're to believe their versions of events, as Waipio claims that he was tortured prior to police filming this. According to Pyo, in the hours before his confession, he was abused, beaten, stripped naked, photographed, and sexually assaulted. To make things worse, he also claims police had threatened to torture and murder him if he did not give them a confession. Zalin even relayed a similar experience, saying that he was physically assaulted and that threats on his life were also made. The two also stated that they were coerced by promises of light sentences of 1 to 2 years if they admitted to the crimes. In 2015, as the trial rolled on, the court called the accusations of torture groundless and said the defendants showed no evidence, but this was far from the only time the Thai police were accused of such behavior. According to Hall, as soon as 13 days after the murder of Hannah and David, quote, "We started getting calls from workers who said they were being tortured and abused as part of the investigation into the case." His organization set out to investigate and photograph several injuries reportedly inflicted by the Thai police. Now, given all of this, it's safe to say that David's phone was most likely planted by the cops to help pin down the two men, and in case that somehow still seems like a stretch, consider this. Police also tried to claim they found Hannah's phone in an incriminating location, but that statement was later retracted when the public noticed that said phone was actually present at the crime scene based on available photos. The prosecution's case only seemed to further deteriorate at this point, and especially so on September 11th of 2015, when Dr. Pontip Rajanasanand, the head of the Thai Forensics Institute, gave her testimony. She stated that, having retested the alleged murder weapon, she found no DNA that was a match for Lin or Pyo. She did, however, find DNA of David Miller and one other unknown male on the handle of the weapon. Dr. Pontip also poked holes in the methodology used at the crime scene, telling the judges that there was no forensics expert on the scene, and that the person who did fulfill the role had no formal forensics training. The defense also accused investigators of failing to test some of the evidence, such as Hannah's own clothing and blood on the rocks and sand. All of this is, of course, infinitely frustrating, and in spite of the mess of an investigation, Zaw Lin and Wai Pyo were convicted of murder, rape, and unlawful entry into Thailand in December of 2015. Their sentence was death. While David Miller's family praised the Thai authorities and were pleased with the outcome, the public response was less favorable. Many felt that Lin and Pyo were simply scapegoats, including Anonymous, who targeted the Thai police website in response, and Hannah Withridge's sister, who endorsed the actions of Anonymous in a Facebook post about the verdict. It should be noted that if you choose to look up said post, she made sweeping generalizations about the Thai people, as if the actions of a single police department justify painting an entire group with one brush. In the end, it seems like everyone is aware that this case is most likely nowhere close to solved, and while the King of Thailand commuted the pair's sentence to life imprisonment in 2020, that's still far from ideal considering the complete lack of evidence against them. Zaw Lin and Wai Pyo were almost executed for a crime they most likely did not commit, and now they'll be spending the rest of their lives behind bars instead. This was obviously not about doing the right thing. To many, this was much more about keeping up appearances rather than actually serving justice. If the effort seemed desperate, that might be because they were. The tourism industry is important to the country's income. The death of foreigners would only make things worse if left unsolved. This is, of course, the simplest explanation for all this, but others believe the cover-up is more sinister than that, with connections to powerful families and organized crime. One thing is for sure, though. David and Hannah weren't the first to die mysteriously in Koh Tao, and they were far from the last. In fact, Koh Tao's international reputation is so dubious that it earned itself the moniker Death Island. But that might be a story suited for another time. This video was edited by Darkfire Productions, researched and written by Lux Noctis, with additional writing by yours truly. I'd like to thank every one of my lovely supporters on Patreon, but especially the following people: T. Gorman, Connor H, Base of Shadow, WH, Sean the CHB, AJ Runaway, Amelia J, Andrew L, Anthony Astro, Bloody the Elf, Brandon S, F, Catherine L, Corky Barks, Daniel G, David G, Dimitri L, Eric M, Espernix, Jamie P, KMBK Ketchup, Mishi Mishi, Ronnie, Sal A, TBF, Tyler T, Ulysses, Zwicha Zales, Daniel P, The Deck of Cards, Gyoza Fairy, Bath Time Duck, Chris M, Chris R, Clifford S, Deja, Echo Steele, Eddie, Elon Musk, I can't say that, I know that you did that on purpose. Francisco B, James M, Jamie M, Val C, Kyle R, Luck B, Matt J, Mega Brutal, Melly, Nick B, Panda Tiger, Patrick A, Pen Stift, Rye S, S Christine, Scorian S, Sky Grinder, Solar Avalon, Sora Rabbit, S PC Zippo, Terry the Outlaw, The Man in the Crowd, Zarai, Zimbledorf the Calzone Consumer, Sir Tim Thinks a Lot, I think that's how you say that, and Stephen S. Again, thank you guys so much, and if you're still listening, you're insane, but I love you, and I'll see you next time.